In this episode, our conversation stems from us reading the book UFO of God by Chris Bledsoe. This sparks an interesting conversation about aliens, spirits, and how can we know if they are from God or not. It also raises the tough conversation of, would you really want to see aliens if you could? Enjoy! You're listening to Campfire Theology, where we explore topics you usually wouldn't discuss in church. So gather around with us, because we believe the conversation itself is holy.
He said Chris Bledsoe said one thing in the book that resonated to me.
Okay.
Was the way he knew that they were actually angelic or whatever, is he said that he had a peace that surpassed all understanding when they came. And that, for me, and I felt that exactly when I've had those God moments.
Yeah, and I agree.
And when I read that, I'm like,
I didn't hear that
feeling.
I do think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, his orbs, the way he describes them with the red eyes.
Yeah. Well, the beings, right? They had the red eyes.
The being, not the orb.
Right.
Well, the orb was red.
No, the orb was like, usually it was a shine with silver.
After he said the initial ones in the field, he said were red. Remember, he came up over the thing. He thought it was the sun at first.
Yes. Yep. Now I
And it was a 45-foot wide, big red.
Why is there a sun in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other part about that is they only come at night. So
I was going to ask that
they
too.
only come at night.
They only come
And,
out. Isn't that
But God in the Bible talks about how we're creatures of the day.
Right.
And we're not creatures of the night.
right?
And that nothing good happens after midnight. Okay, that's not in the Bible. But
Except for
But,
fourth
like,
meals at
Don't-
Taco Bell.
don't eat after midnight. I think that's the gremlins.
That's,
Yeah, they're not supposed to eat after.
no, but he talks about how we're not creatures of the night. That's a good verse, actually.
it is.
I don't.
Yeah, that is it. Didn't he say those he had some, like later on though, that was in the middle of the day. That's not like,
Well, that was because that's when
Yeah, right over his house.
over his house, that like hard in the window.
that no one else could see but him. That
Well,
one.
I thought
His wife said, yeah. See, and that freaked me out. Like just the description of like a giant guy just staring in your window at you. It just, this giant being.
Yeah.
I was so torn because, 1 minute it's like the piece surpasses all understanding. I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds like complete angels to me. And then later on, you got this giant being just staring at you in your living room like a creeper. That to me just sounded like satanic, like a devil.
Right.
Like it was very back. Like 1 minute he'd have me this way, next minute this. I don't know.
Could it have been both? You know what I mean? Could some of the instances been angels?
Definitely.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's a good
I don't think
question.
about it that way, but yeah, I guess what's to say you would give up? Well, later on too, he said, didn't he? He said something about like, one is they told him, "Don't be afraid, we're not here to harm you." We're here.
Right.
But then he actually took them later as like they're there as guardians or there as whatever. Like it was something almost like he said, like it was to train him and prepare him for what he was going to deal. So it was almost like the fear and everything else is kind of like it had to strengthen him of like all the hardships he was going to have.
Right.
Is kind of how I took it.
What was interesting to me is that there was healing that took place, like
Right.
physical healing.
Yeah, the crone.
Yeah. So, and with others around him in that.
I thought
So
that was interesting.
that to me, I was like, that spoke instinctually to me of it being a more heavenly type thing. I don't know if Satan has the power to heal
I don't think he does.
physically.
Yeah.
I wouldn't,
I don't think
Even
think so
for
either.
nefarious purposes, I'm going to heal you so that
so that you believe,
some can
Envy.
fly or something.
Right.
I
Deceitful
don't
thing.
think-
I still am not convinced that Satan can affect physical. Like Satan has the
Right.
power to change physical,
just
anything.
Like reality?
like physical realities. Like the mics situation. Like I don't think that he has the power to like mess up the mics. If that makes sense. I think that like a vaccine or a virus, he has to like deceive a being into doing something, right? That's kind of more of what I think.
It's okay. That's interesting because I was a second grade and I was at this. it was a Bible camp, a soccer camp, and I'll never forget. It was actually where I got saved. And we're at this camp, and there was hundreds of
Actually.
kids outside, and they're like sitting around this fire, and they're like the main speaker was there. He's a professional soccer player. Was there talking to all of us, and it was the weirdest thing. And it was literally like God was telling me, like, "Yep, good job. Like you passed this test at the thing, right?" Because it was so we're sitting there, and we're all sitting there listening to the speaker. We're all little kids, right? So we're easily distracted. Literally behind us, like as the speaker's doing this, and it starts getting like deep in the downs where this train was coming behind, and it sits there like literally behind the field, and it like derails his car and starts one of like it is this huge commotion, all this stuff literally right behind us, to where all these kids are just like start focusing on this train. And I'm sitting next to this kid next to me, and he just completely watching it, like ignoring the speaker. And I tapped on him, and I was like, "Don't pay attention to that. That's the devil trying to distract you." And literally, like a few minutes later, the speaker's like, "And I know what's going on behind me. I want you guys to focus on me. That's the devil right now trying to distract you because he doesn't want you to hear God's word." And it was funny, like literally, like a second grade, I heard that. I'm like, just instinctually, I knew like that. Don't do that though. Someone kind of like told me that, right? And then the speaker confirmed it.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of think, to your point, Bill, is I like that. I do believe was like the devil had a way of like trying to disrupt it, right?
Sure.
Trying to distract it. Where, I mean,
Was it blowing the horn? Did you say?
No, he was like derailing cars. Like the guy was just
doing rail
activity,
yeah.
But he had to stop and do it right, in the middle of nowhere. He had to do it
Right.
right here where all these kids were trying to do it.
It must have been really distractive.
Really mess with your train of thought there.
Nice. That was a good one, Kyle.
But
That's
so like
better
to
than
that,
Josh's.
is that what?
His was really bad.
Like I'm curious. So like, is that something you think is impossible? Because like you said, you don't think the devil can distract, or he can't like.
I think
No, I think he
do
distracts for
something
sure.
like that. Like how, to me, that's kind of the same.
Yeah, I know what you're
Yeah,
saying.
but okay. So part of me is like,
You could
okay,
think, oh, he influenced the conductor.
that's what that would be. That would be more what I think. Like maybe the conductor's like, oh, I should just stop and
involved.
I should stop and do this right now. You know, like instead of going up to the normal rail station, doing it a mile from here. Like, look, all these kids will probably want to see that train.
So you think
So maybe they stop.
I think he needs like a human medium.
I do.
Just electronic.
I do. I think he can influence people and deceive them and make them do things or think things. And even talks about in the Bible how I lost my train of thought, but how he
train.
And
yeah,
stuff.
there you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
You're really bad. And you're
He talks about how Satan will try to deceive you in a spirit of like righteousness. Like evil spirits will come and try to deceive you through being righteous, like falsely righteous. So they lead people astray that way too. And part of me thinks like something like that could have been as innocuous as like the conductor's like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna stop here where all these kids are outside.
They can watch.
Maybe they can watch me do the train thing, and they'll think it's so cool. And like not realizing that the devil put that thought into his brain, and it was the devil who was let's distract these 50 kids about to get saved. I'm about to lose 50 kids. You know.
Yeah.
5:5. But you, brothers, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You're all sons of the light and sons of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness.
Sounds like Batman.
So then let us, Thessalonians 5:5. So then let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be alert and self-controlled. For those who sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be self-controlled, putting on faith and love as a breastplate and the hope of salvation as a helmet.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's the idea in First John too about God being light.
Right.
You know that he's the one that illuminates things what happens during the day. And what you're talking about before was from 2 Corinthians 11. Such people are false apostles. This is verse 13. Such people are false apostles, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ. No wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising then if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness.
Yeah.
Which is just what you said.
Yeah.
So then the way to test the spirits, you're saying, is whether they would acknowledge Jesus came in the flesh.
Yeah.
That Jesus Christ is Lord, right?
Yeah, Jesus Christ came in the flesh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is Lord, yeah. Do not put out the Spirit's fire. Do not treat prophecies with contempt. Test everything. Hold on to the good and all avoid every kind of evil.
Right. I think that has a word for you and me, Will, in there, because it says test everything, which is what I need to
But
do.
do not treat
Do not
prophecies
treat
with
it with
contempt.
contempt.
Yeah.
What?
That was probably more geared toward you.
But do not what?
It says, do not treat prophecies with contempt. Test everything. Hold on to the good and avoid every kind of evil.
Right. So, if you're inherently skeptical, then you might have the idea that, like, this person's just trying to fool me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But do not treat everything.
Yeah, and right before that says, do not put out the Spirit's fire.
Yeah.
That's good.
And that's
with
good.
pure skepticism.
Do not put out the Spirit's fire. Do not treat prophecies.
That kind of goes along with what I was saying, though, of like, I don't want to put out the Spirit's fire if
it's the Spirit.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Like, these orbs are God.
I don't want to be that
like I should be
out.
Even
be open.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
I'm probably on that extreme.
Right.
Full transparency.
Yeah.
Like
I think a lot of times,
like Brother Yoon is yes. No, just kidding.
Yeah. If you're listening,
I can't wait till you and him meet in heaven, and you just look like an idiot.
right? Because he's the heavenly man. He's gonna
Right.
do.
He will.
Yeah.
Self-proclaimed, yeah, for sure.
And you're the unheavenly skeptic.
So you
I'm the heavenly skeptic. I'm doubting Thomas in modern day.
Exactly.
When you get to heaven, God's gonna be like, "Oh, well, my skeptic's here." Right on.
Yeah, right on.
Right about the skin of your teeth.
What a weird saying.
That is a weird saying. Like, does your teeth have skin?
Or did you bite somebody?
Exactly.
Or should you brush more often?
A biblical phrase, skin of your teeth. I'm pretty sure it is.
So let me ask this question then. So would you want, if you were Chris Bledsoe, if you wanted, would you want to have the encounters with the aliens or the spirits or whatever?
What's that you probably from?
What?
Go ahead.
Would you want to be in his shoes, just having the experiences? Because one, it's like he made it clear that it was a major burden on his life.
Right, that people saw him as ridiculous. And
to me, like, as he's talking about that, I'm like, yeah, I guess I can totally see how that would be, because like 100%. If somebody's sitting here, somebody came up to us, somebody in our church or anything, my initial reaction would be skepticism. I would not believe him, and you would look at him differently.
Yes.
And
especially if he's super
like a crazy person.
Right. Yeah.
And he talks about that.
And he talked about how hard it was. And it's like, why would any good parent honestly want to subject their family to that? And he made it pretty clear. Like he even got to the point that one time, right, where he said, I don't want any of this. I want to film this.
Not going to talk about
his vulnerability and that kind of stuff. That's where I started to believe. And I think the reason this book was so believable to me is because originally I liked aliens. All this is stupid. I don't even want to do. I was going to say, it's like, I'm going to opt out of this one. But I first got it, edited. And then, but once he said that, he believed that they were angels and that they don't take the same form. And, everything is what our perception of cherubim with wings. And, it's like when they're actually a different form, that's when it switched for me where I'm like, okay, now this could be believable.
Right.
Yeah. And that maybe throughout time, what people have mistaken throughout history as aliens have actually been encounters of heavenly. Like that's what kind of switched for me of like, okay, now I'm actually open to it. I still don't know what I believe.
So do you think,
but I'm open to it.
Yeah. Do you think that it's kind of weird that like an Area 51 type thing exists? Like there's such a strong geographic, like the people in that 100-mile radius are like, 90% of them believe in UFOs and believe in all this stuff, right? Is that because they've had personal encounters and they've, or is that just because culturally it's like, everyone believes in these same way, like when you grow up in a Christian family, everyone was Christian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
well, also what spoke to me in that was clearly our government knows more than what they are letting on.
Absolutely.
Like,
they're not the weak.
Like, just recently there's been classified documents that have been released and they're like, okay, we're at least going to acknowledge the fact because there's been so many interactions or encounters. So we're going to at least like open it up a little bit, and we're going to start saying, yeah, there's stuff that we've seen that we can't explain.
Right.
And there's videos of that kind of corroborate what he was saying of these TikTok shape orbs, if you've ever seen those. And again, all of the videos are super grainy and all of that, but it's like they defy physics. So is that something extraterrestrial outside of our realm, or is it some sort of technology that we have created that the rest of the world doesn't know about, or a different country created that is so far beyond that we don't want to talk about it?
I tend to think it's the latter, personally.
It could be.
Like a UFO is just that nobody can identify. It's unidentified.
Right.
By us, but somebody can identify.
I was wondering about that. Did anybody do any research on some of the documents that were released? Because I think it was about a year or maybe two ago where the government released a bunch of UFO documents and everyone was going crazy. The UFO cases.
I didn't know about that.
No, I didn't know about
I watched most all the videos.
Classified UFO information from this last 40 years, basically, right?
Yep.
And
why did they release it?
Public pressure,
and there was some other reason I don't remember.
There was some sort of, I forget, there was a senator or something that was like,
who pushed forward, had a bill pushed through and got passed or something. I can't remember exactly, but
even then, so then
nobody did any research on that.
I did to an extent. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I know it exists, but I don't know any of the details.
Well, okay, so like the video, so our military has had all sorts of encounters with them, especially people flying in airplanes. There are numerous military pilots that have had testimonies of these, and they say they look like TikToks, like a Tic Tac out in the atmosphere, and it can fly straight up and down, and it can be there and then gone just like that. It makes no noise, no residue.
We must have read the same Yahoo article.
Like something, right?
I do know what you're talking about. I read that same thing.
And so those would be the experience that I know of, and it at least makes you at least watch and you go, that's something. That's not nothing.
That's not,
and so then you open the door. It's like, okay. Well, if our government is at least acknowledging it, then that to me signifies the seriousness of it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. This is not one crazy person in North Carolina.
Exactly.
Trying to write
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and then you go through his documents towards the end of it. He gets to see the entire underground network that the government has of all of the stuff that they are doing in terms of looking through the brain and seeing what sort of experiences they had. And he said he had some sort of metals that were from a different planet, and they confiscated them. Again, how much of that you believe, I don't know, but it's at least like something. Like the government clearly knows stuff.
And and they even said they even had a name for it, right? There's two different types, and he was one that seemed to have like an affinity, or like he knew when they were going to come before they actually came.
You could sense them.
Yeah, he had like a whatever.
Yeah, they call it
some type of connection.
He had an ability to like summon them.
Correct.
Yeah,
and it's like, and the government already knew that ahead of time. They're like, oh, you have a very high strength of this.
Right.
So how would they know that unless that had previously happened?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think the government for sure hides tons of stuff. A lot of it because Trump and all kinds of past presidents have said in the past, or even things with war or whatever else, or COVID or anything, they have information. They just don't release all of it because they don't want widespread panic.
Yeah, but
they try to panic.
100% agree. Yeah.
So same thing with this. If
I don't trust our government.
Hey, everybody, here's all the and stuff, and they put it out there, people would just be going hysterical. Right?
Yeah, imagine that.
Well, I think they have to.
You'd still have people that were like, no, it's all
yeah. There's always going to be.
And then with no evidence at all, you'd still have people that were like, no, it's all true.
Right.
So
exactly.
Right. So that's where, to me, like, I fall in line of like, just throw it all out there then. Let people decide their own.
Yeah.
The more you try to be the discerner and the parent to society, the more skepticism it brings.
Yeah.
As opposed to actual reality.
Well, I think, to David's point, though, is if you're the one in control and you throw all this information out there that potentially disrupts that control and that power, that's their motivation not to.
Yeah, but then within that, like they're assuming that they know what would happen if they
Right.
Well,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they have a pretty good idea, right? I mean, if you were sitting on a bunch of information that you knew, like,
well, then if they aren't releasing it, then it makes me
makes you more
assume
suspicious.
it makes me more suspicious, saying like, wow, there must be serious powers
Sure.
that they are aware of that would undermine the entire government. Because if it's just like these orbs or whatever,
There is though.
well, then goes back to this. Then
I don't know that it's aliens. But I think that there's dynamics in our world that if the general public knew about them would completely disrupt order in our modern civilized society.
Well, and that's not my point. Is right now there is skepticism. There's people who believe UFOs. There's random sites out there, but the general population is. Because I actually just listened to a survey the other week on who believes in aliens and who doesn't, and it's like 45% do. This fella, but if you look at it right now, we're pretty much under order, and everything's kind of kosher.
Yeah,
There's people who believe that. People who think skeptical, whatever. So from their point of view, and I get it, if they have all the information, what benefit did they get by releasing all that?
None.
There's not.
Well, look at COVID as like such a perfect example, right? Like they intentionally like muted different people. Anybody who was opposing the vaccines, like I'm not a big conspiracy. I don't think the government was trying to kill us with their vaccines or anything. I really don't.
I don't either.
But it is very suspicious that when people were coming out and saying that they were going on, the government was on record trying to mute those people, trying to deplatform them, trying to demonetize their YouTubes. Like, why would they go through such an effort?
Yeah.
If all it was just a differing opinion.
Correct.
That is very sketchy.
Yeah, it's a control of information. That's a 1984 kind of idea.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
That we're not going to give out, like what Kyle was saying. Like we're not going to.
We can't give the layman all this information. He'll riot and he'll rebel and he'll overthrow and there'll be anarchy in streets, right?
Right.
To David's point, there's they gain nothing. They being the ones in power,
which then presumes. But then they're making the presumption that as society lies right now is better than what the alternative outcome could potentially be of all the truth of being out there.
You're making the assumption that they care about the overall goodwill.
I'm saying that the society that that we have, whether it's orchestrated through government release in order, that is ultimately what the government desires. It then leads me to like listening to this book or reading this book is like, okay, what if there is these other things that are out there and we are not open and able to listen to them because we are so apathetic and or skeptical towards them that it's the continual cycle that no one is able to break free from. And did perhaps Chris Bledsoe and the people around him actually break free from?
Yeah, maybe they're pioneers, right?
Exactly.
And isn't that what he said too? Was like, if you want to see them, just ask.
Yeah, at the end there, right?
But that to me, that feels dangerously like summoning,
and
channeling those evil spirits. To me,
I kind of thought that too, but it went the other way.
I get the point, but
Seeking you will find.
It's almost like praying to angels, or let's say that they were angels. You're not really supposed to pray to angels either. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty clear, like, especially like the book of Hebrews at the beginning, like Jesus is the one that we pray to. Jesus is the one who's over top. And so that was something that I thought of when I was reading this book and we talked about it a little bit before, but the idea that, they don't specifically talk about Jesus per se. They don't point him out. None of the alien incidents or the interactions even really talk about him, or even God to an extent. Maybe when he had this experience with the lady, but even then it was more about his mission and not so much about
I agree.
What the source was of their power or what have you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we believe that God created the entire universe, then we would have to believe that he created these aliens as well, and that there's some kind of reason why we shouldn't know about them, unless it's a man-made concoction that we don't know about them, So, But I would think that if they are angels, then they're following God's will and that they would glorify God.
That's
Right.
kind of what I would think.
In the book of Luke, when that happens, when they show up, they glorify God. They say, yeah, I'm looking at it right now, Luke 2, 8 through 15, but it's specifically in verse 13, it says, a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angels, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest.
Right.
And on earth, peace to those whom his favor rests. It's very specific to like,
Doesn't say, we're not here to harm you.
right, exactly. Yeah. It does say,
Did you
don't
think
bring
that through?
don't be afraid. I bring you good tidings of great joy, which
Yeah,
I've all
sure.
heard at Christmas. But and then of course, right to Jesus. So I think that specific quality of it was lost on me, and that kind of
Meaning
was
like they didn't say it enough.
yeah.
for you?
That to me it feels like because they didn't talk about
And mention God about.
yeah, that he didn't talk about Jesus
Yeah.
specifically was a red flag for me.
Red flag, not necessarily like a, throw it out with a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought it was,
Definitely.
I thought it was interesting or suspicious that they could talk.
Sure.
They told him, we're not here to hurt you.
Yeah.
And yet he was still running from them. You would think like if it could speak English, that you would sit and think, okay, well, what are you then? You know what I mean? Like, what are you here for?
Yeah.
Like, why keep running away and then never try to talk to him again?
Yeah.
If you're summoning him that like this frequently and you can just dull up a thought and they're there.
But if you can imagine that, if you saw something like, I mean, I think I'd be freaked out too. Even if it said I'm not gonna hurt you, it's like you just feel shocked. Like, oh,
I completely agree. But
The first time.
20 years have gone by and
Yeah.
he's had how many 2,500 videos that he's
and he always
And you
tries to though. It sounds like at least I thought he always tried to, but like usually it would just be such short.
interaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it was too. But I thought that was a little suspicious. It was like, hey, all you had to do was ask him. Apparently they can speak English.
That was one of my questions.
You know,
I read it.
it's just kind of bizarre.
Then asked him like,
Right.
what is there with this?
Or maybe they're speaking another language that just happens to line up exactly.
What?
That makes a lot of sense.
It's like a female English.